Welcome and thank you for joining us for our Tuesday Treasure program, where we go through some of the lesser seen objects in the museum's collection. My name, as always, is Nicole Carpenter, and I'm the Programs and Collections Director here at the Westport Museum for History and Culture. As always, we are pleased to offer this program free of charge, but as always, we do suggest or have a suggested donation of $5 if you are able to contribute. We do appreciate any contributions that you can make, and that also includes supporting us by following us on social media. If you have any questions during our program, please do enter them in the comments box, and that includes questions, anecdotes, comments, anything that you would like to share about our program. Please do enter those. I and my team will go through those after the program that we present. This evening, we are going through the museum's collections of dolls and figurines and some of these spooky items. So we are going to go through some general history on dolls and figurines first, before we jump into the items that you see in front of you. So some of the earliest toys that we know of were probably dolls, and this is supported by archaeology that is done throughout the world. All the way back to Egypt, we see that dolls have been a part of human life and entertainment, and they have evolved as we've gone through history. They've also been found at sites in ancient Greece and Rome, as well as some sites in Japan, and then throughout the world as history progressed. Some of the very first dolls that have been recovered are found in the shape of kind of wooden paddles or wooden boards that are shaped to look like a human figure. There are also, of course, other human figurines throughout the world. You think of the figures on Easter Island and statues in ancient Rome, but dolls, kind of these handheld figurines, these kind of toys, probably would have been made of wood first. There are other representations that are not shown here tonight, like a corn husk doll that would have been made by indigenous peoples, as well as some other kind of handmade examples. And dolls, of course, are still in use today. We know from the 90s, we have Polly Pockets. Many people from the 90s and the 2000s, and even today, will remember American Girl dolls, and even more modern things like Pop Funkos and things like that. And many of them remain very collectible, like action figures and things like that. G.I. Joe was another form of doll, and then, of course, Barbie. But there is a stigma around dolls, and this has to do with them looking like people. There is a uncanniness to a lot of dolls, and that has kind of given us this history of unsettling figurines. In some people, in their brain, because something looks like a person, but they still recognize that it's an inanimate object, it causes a sense of nervousness and dread. And that's something that unfortunately happens with some of the objects in our collection. Some of our visitors and some of our volunteers and some of our staff as well, find our dolls to be a little unnerving. There is, of course, a very famous doll in Connecticut that is not held in the Westport Museum's collection, but is held in another museum's collection. And this, of course, is the doll Annabelle. There was a film that just came out about Annabelle. I think there's actually been two, but she was held by the demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren out of Monroe, Connecticut, and it was a part of their occult museum until it closed. But of course, this is still an ongoing kind of folklore around the doll and this supposedly possessed Raggedy Ann doll that was a part of their collection. But we do not know of any possession or demons in the dolls that we have here tonight. They behave very nicely on their shelves where they are housed. and I'm sure they will remain that way. But the first doll that I wanted to point out to you all tonight is actually the doll seated over here. Now, this is the oldest figure on the table this evening. This doll probably dates to around 1880. It is made of, a composite material. It is not porcelain, but it is kind of this artificial material. It's a little fragile. It does have articulated limbs. It can be a little difficult to get her to sit up, but she does have actual hair. It is this beautiful red hair along with cotton bonnet and dress. And she does have blue eyes. It is not the kind of eyes that follow you as you move the doll around, but she does have these very bright blue eyes. And this has been in our collection since 1988. So it was about 100 years old when it came into our collection. The next figure that I wanted to show you is the smallest piece that we have on the table tonight. And I will hold it up for you if I put my gloves on. This is, of course, a Cupey doll, which some of you may be familiar with. We have done a Tuesday Treasure on Cupey dolls and their artist, Rose O'Neill. I do encourage you to watch that video if you would like some more information about her specifically. But this small piece here, she of course has this lovely red dress, this velvet red dress with some white detailing. She does have movable limbs, though they don't bend at the kind of the elbow or the knee. And she has this lovely little painted face and dark hair. Now, it is interesting that she looks quite a bit different from Cupey's later on. This piece is probably from the 1920s or 30s. It is quite old. The oldest Cupeys are actually made in 1912 in Germany. This is probably a bit later than that. But most Cupeys, as they're drawn by Rose O'Neill, of course, the illustrator, cartoonist, and creator of the Cupeys, she usually draws her Cupeys with this very fine blonde yellowish hair just at the top of their head. They don't usually have this dark hair, so this is quite a bit different from the way that Cupeys are usually depicted. Now, Rose O'Neill, in her time in the 1920s and 30s, was the highest paid illustrator. She only falls from that spot once Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse come along. She is the most popular cartoon of the day as well. Cupeys become very popular with both children and adults when it is popularized in the 20s. And of course, Rose O'Neill lived here in Westport for a time, and she is known for being a part of the suffrage movement here in town. This particular Cupey doll was donated by Jocelyn Thrush, who actually donated some of the other items in our collection, some of the other dolls and some of the other Cupeys that we saw in that previous video. The third piece here on the table is more of a handmade piece. It does have some some machine stitching. This is a white cloth doll. This is probably from the late 20th century. It does feature a cloth body. It is sewn, and it does have this light blue and white cotton dress, as well as embroidered features and black yarn hair. And this was donated in 2003, so one of the newest additions in our doll collection by Linda Hudson. So we would love to know more about this piece and more about all of our pieces. There is, of course, ongoing research on all of these as we move through our collection. Now, the last and largest piece that we have here on the table is, of course, this doll here. She features a very, very long cotton and embroidered dress. And this was also, as I mentioned, donated by Jocelyn Thrush, a very frequent donor to the museum. Thank you very much. Jocelyn was actually a doll collector and a former illustrator's model. That might be part of the reason she had so many dolls. But this particular piece is different from the rest as it is articulated in a way, but it's through fabric. The limbs and face are actually made of paper mache. You can see that her face is painted on, as well as her hair underneath her bonnet. It is all painted on. But both her head and her limbs, she does have both feet and both hands, are made of paper mache. But the way that her limbs function is by actually, I think her sleeve is actually attached. But she does have a very thin stitched line that creates an elbow. So it does actually move. This doll also is very tall, quite tall actually, 28 inches tall when she stands, though her dress is much, much longer. And she does feature these white leather shoes, which are very lovely. Now, all of these pieces would have been collectible, very much so for the Cupey, but they also would have been play items. These are very much meant to be used, and they would have been used by children, especially young ladies, as they were growing up. Now, before I leave you for the evening, I do want to, of course, thank you for tuning in. I also want to encourage you to join us for the rest of our Spooktober programming. This includes multiple walking tours, our lantern tour, our darkness event where we will be going through superstitions in colonial minds while entirely in the dark. And there are, of course, many other programs all throughout October that I hope you will tune in for. In 2 weeks, we will also be going through another Tuesday Treasure, all about some more spooky items in our collection that we are calling All Hallows Eve. So do join us for that in 2 weeks. If there is nothing else, no questions, I will leave you for the evening. Thank you so much for joining us and come back soon. Thank you.